Hi, everyone. Ooh. All right, so for day 11 through 20, we will be covering, and the chapters I will be covering is day 11 through 13. So day 11's big idea, um, it was all about, wait, is this 11? I'm sorry, because I have my notes on each chapter. Okay. Day 11 reviewed the roles and responsibilities for co-teaching, and one of the first steps were for the two teachers that will be co-teaching, or any teacher that you will be co-teaching with, is to divide and conquer, as the chapter or the day put it. And they meant by divide and conquer is tally up all the roles and responsibilities that the two teachers may have, and for them to look at it and then like delegate who will do what, who would take on the responsibility of what in the class or for the year. And then it also talked about taking on new roles. And one thing I thought that was important when they spoke about taking on new roles is to get the most out of your co-teaching relationship. You and your partner should regularly take turns trying new roles and responsibilities, and to note that co-teaching teams must seriously take on the idea that no one person takes the role of one particular role. Everyone should have their feet in every role. And that goes along with like teamwork and collaboration. So that was really day 11. Day 12 was one of my favorite chapters, or one of my favorite days. And just like it says, get in the habit, that's really what it's talked about for co-teachers, to get in the habit of doing certain things. And in day 12, they talked about 10 helpful habits that teachers can get into. And one was thank someone daily. And these things can be very obvious or it can be very minimal. But it noted that it doesn't take much effort to just thank someone daily, to lighten up. Um, so in the midst of the chaos and behaviors, it noted that we should look for some light um, in the situation. Pick your battles wisely. Realize stuff happens. So particularly us as new teachers, things will happen. So knowing that, getting the habit of thinking like stuff will happen, it will be okay. Um, Another thing is to be flexible. Um, I know for me, being flexible is really crucial, especially with the behaviors that I encounter. So be flexible with to new ideas. Be flexible with your co-teacher. Let others be right. So if your co-teacher have an idea that you don't agree with or you're kind of hesitant on, let others be right. And if it is not right, it did talk about not really scolding your co-teacher, more so being encouraging and being positive, becoming more patient. Um, that is one habit that I note. And then avoid snowball thinking. Um, this is one that, I've heard of snowball thinking, but it was one of my um, new terms that I came across as I read. And snowball thinking is us as teachers or anyone thinking of negative thoughts, and then that leads to a negative thought, and then leads to another one and another one, and then eventually we get anxious, stressed, or there's a lot of tension. Don't interrupt. So be respectful of your co-teacher's ideas or thoughts, and don't interrupt until they are done finishing their thoughts. Repeat, everything is not an emergency. Um, and then the last habit from the 10 that was noted in day 12 was imagine everyone is enlightened except you. This is one I really liked because it talked about you know, you might run into teachers that may feel like they know it all, or teachers with X amount of experience that may feel like they there's nothing to learn, they know it all. But it noted that um, just imagine everyone is there to enlighten you. So even if you know what that person may be talking about, just be there to learn and listen, because maybe there is something that you may not have known, even if you didn't know it. Um, that was chapter or day 12. Day 13 really talked about building a community in the classroom, and the teachers can do that, or the two co-teachers can first start off modeling those expectations to their students. Um, and one way they can do that I noted, that teachers can model encouragement in front of one another and demonstrate innocent teasing by engaging in ongoing practical jokes. And it did note that while the two teachers are engaging in this, students can join in. Um, let's see. To build a community in day 13, some strategies that I noted were clear expectations and values is one way to help build the community in a classroom. Another was appreciation, and there was showing appreciation. And to do this, one way that I found in day 13 that was good was it was called the sweet spot. So students would pick a person, or one student would get in a chair, and then other students would just show them gratitude and give them positive praise. And then each student would just go on rotation and do that. Humor, class meetings, read alouds. One thing I liked about the read alouds is um, to get students to engage in conversations, we could implement diverse books. Um, Race to Right. Oh no, I'm sorry. So another way of building community in the classroom was incorporating games. One game that I particularly liked was called Lineup. This was one that my district had in the beginning of the school year, where students or staff can they post I guess what is it called, paper on the wall, all over the wall, and they are questions, and then the teacher or the facilitator will read those questions, and the students or staff will go to where their response would typically fall, and then they have conversations. So that was one way that you can build community in the classroom. And then another way that I found that students might like is 5-minute interviews, where the students interview each other. And if you're working with children that are younger, one way they can engage in this activity is you have a list of those questions, and then they can select the ones that they want to choose to interview their peer. But yeah, that was day 13, strategies and ways to build community in the classroom.
I think especially like not chapter, day 12, like I think it's a very, you kind of mentioned it, like being flexible. I think that's something that's so big, especially like, with new teachers, because like during the beginning of the school year, like my co-teachers were new teachers. So it's like, they're like fresh up college and they're like, oh, I'm having all 20,000 ideas. And you're like, all right, let's try it. And if we fail, then cool, like let's, life goes on.
Mm-hmm.
And then picking your struggles. The other day, it was last week, one of the science teachers, she literally was just talking about that. There was a student that we have that is like, you could say, a pain in the butt. And she was like, it's one of those where I'm just at like, pick my battles. Like, do I really want to like get frustrated over this, or I'm just going to let it slide? And I'm at a point where like, why am I even going to bother with this? And like, there are days where, yeah, like I'm going to fight with him because this should be done. But today is not one of those days. And it was like, and it's funny because when I was reading it, like that was the first thing that popped in my head. And it's like, yeah. And then I also like the whole thank someone daily. Um, And as a Sika, when I was a Sika, like it was nice to get that, oh, thanks for helping today. And that was something that I would do. With my Sika, when I have him in second period, he helps out. And then every time it's like, oh, thanks for helping us. Every like at the end of class, oh, thanks for helping us. And it's like, yeah, he's supposed to be in there, but just having that gratitude, I feel like it makes you feel better.
Yeah. And with you saying that too, it had me thinking, we can not only, it's easy to thank our colleagues, but then thanking our students too, which is one of the things that I do a lot. It'll just be simple things like, thanks for doing your work. And then I'll have one student was like, wait, why are you thanking me? You worked hard. Thank you. Thank you for participating. Pretty easy.
Yeah, no, and even like one of my students who has like he has a really hard time, like his attitude. And he had left out the chair and I was like, "Oh, hey, can you push the chair in for me?" And he just gave me a look and pushed it. And I was like, "Oh, hey, thanks anyways for doing it." And he did it, but it was just like no attitude or anything. And I was like, "Oh, thanks for doing it for me." And he just looked at me like, "What? You asked me." And it was
Mhm.
just like simple things like that. And like you said, like they look at you like, "What?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they need to hear it
Yeah,
just as much as we do.
definitely. Okay. So I'm gonna go into day 14. We could move on.
Mhm.
All right. So day 14 was shake up your structure. I thought this was kind of funny. So like it went into asking the questions, like what's your structure like? And then I went A, B, C, D, E, F. I immediately thought about my setting with my mentor when we do pull out, and we are F. And because we it's him and I, and we have a mentor, we have a Sika in our classroom, and we split up our groups and we utilize what we have. So we have the Sika help us out, and we divide the class, and they're using two different novels because they're at different levels. And so we're lucky enough to have that. So it was like, oh, you can continue, like skip this section. And I was like, well, only if life was that easy, but I know I have to read this. So obviously I was continuing on. I was like, oh, isn't that lovely? We're using the resources that we should be. But then it was like, okay, but that's not the only classroom setting that I'm in. So it was talking about the co-teaching styles that obviously we learned, the duet teaching. So it talks about the equal status and when you should be using them, especially when you're introducing a unit lesson, concluding a unit or a lesson, facilitating a class meeting, playing a whole class game, engaging in a community building. Um, I'm like gonna have a really hard time talking here, but I got this. Another one would be one teach, one assist, and then that's setting up or a complex presentation or demonstration, managing a lesson with a new learning tool or technology, managing a lesson with lots of directions or transitions, a set of classroom, or when you're setting up a classroom for a change or connecting with individual students. Then we're looking at one teach, one float, which helps ensure students are receiving support and being able to get critique or feedback. And then we get student supports on independent work or group. They help support students in like when they're being assembled into pairs or groups, ensuring students follow along, ensure students are participating or that they're understanding the lesson, providing assistance with materials or equipment. And then we have the one teach, one make. This one I wasn't aware of. I'm not sure about you guys, but the one teach, one make multi-sensory. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And it's a punch-up lesson with additional mode output. So this one, it offers more than one mode of output during lesson. It adds interest, humor, or a bit of drama to a lesson. It's a show off of a new tech or tool. engages in demonstration, and provides memorable intro or conclusion to a unit of study. And then that was for day 14. I'm not sure if you guys ever heard of the multi-sensory one,
Mhm.
but that one was kind of new to me for the co-teaching models.
That one, yeah, I never really heard of it. It kind of reminds me like a VDL in a way, but like when I thought about that, it reminded me like, you know, like those movie theater experiences where they have the one that kind of like stimulate all your senses, and I'm like, huh, would that be similar to it, you know?
Well, that brought me to high school. We had a world studies class, and what they would do with us is they would teach us. So like we learned about the monks, and then like they had the whole setting where it was like they would have that type of music, the lights were all off, and then we would have candles at our desk. So like it was like we were living in that era. So I was like, okay, that would make sense. And it was 2 teachers too, so like they were co-teaching. Um, so it was like, okay, interesting. Like I've never seen it except for in that setting. And then day 15. So we have parallel perfectly. And this one it involves splitting class into 2 sections. This is good. It's best when it's needed for intimate learning. It allows for you to be able to have 2 groups where you're able to respond to each other aloud, engages in hands-on activity, and you're able to interact with others. You're able to deliver the content, the same content to the 2 groups. It's giving you the ability to provide different activities, concept, or ideas as well. This can be seen as a split group teaching context. So it can be like one teacher is teaching one content, and then the other teacher can be either teaching the same content or another content, and then in, let's say, in 10 minutes, and then what you can do is it can be done in 2 different ways. Teacher A teaches, it was like an example would be like the US Senate and then Congress. And then in 10 minutes, they would flip and they would teach the opposite, or they could be either teaching the same thing and then after 10 minutes, teach the rest in a whole group. Or they can be teaching opposites and then together do a Venn diagram and then get what they got from each other in that Venn diagram, taught together, which was pretty interesting. And then this allows for you to get to know students a little bit better, providing you the opportunity to provide a more intimate feedback so you get to know the students a little bit better, and then give students the ability to be more comfortable because they're in smaller groups. And then day 16. Day 16 is says it's called Take Your Stations. This divides the content and spreads out students that needs. So the point of this is what you want your students, what they need to know, and then what they're going to be able to do. So when you look at the lesson objective, you want to know, you're looking at the task, the activity, and the exercise, because you're going to provide the opportunity for skills, the practice, discussion, problem solving, the review of new material, partner reading, product creation, tech tool exploration. So this concept is you're going to provide them the ability to go to different stations, but you have to think about how many stations there are going to be, how long. It depends on the objective. So if you want them to spend a certain amount of time to understand the objective, then obviously you would spend more time and create less stations. Or if you want them just to explore so that they get the concept of it, you can create more stations with less time. And then you have to consider the flow of the stations and then determine whether you want these stations to go in a certain directions, if you want them to repeat, or if you want them to meet a requirement of going to each station at least once. Sorry. You're conducting a station teaching lesson, so you're looking at the workspace. Oh, so you want go on to the next one? I'll go back.
Which day 16 or 17? My day?
I'll finish. I'm good. I thought I was gonna have, so what you want to do is consider what you're going to be working on, so that way, when you set up the space, you want to think about what materials are going to be needed. If there's not many materials, you don't need desks, so you need chairs. You need to think about transitioning. If there's going to be numbers that are going to be posted, you want to make sure that there's directions that are going to be placed there, outlining what tasks are going to be needed for them, timers, a poster or video, even a visual as to how it's going to be needed, and then the materials that you're going to need, and then ensuring that you're differentiating each of the stations so that you're allowing the students the ability. I wasn't too fond of how they showed, like they were saying that you can allow students to pick and choose, or you can tell them that they can skip some of the stations. I think those aren't things that you should verbally tell students, because then I feel like you're really not differentiating. You're kind of like limiting them, or even telling the students that are excelling that they can create stations. Like, I felt like those were kind of condescending as well, but that was mine on that take on those.
Yeah, it's kind of like lowering expectations of the students when you're saying, oh, you don't have to do that. You can say, you could come back to it, go to another one you feel more comfortable, and then, come back but not lowering the expectation if the expectation is for them to experience and get exposure to every station.
I think if you're putting out so many, sorry, Josue, but I think if you're putting out so many, I think it should be like, get to as many as you can, but make sure you're following the order and not requiring everybody to get to those. If you think that there's just too many, maybe you have too many and there shouldn't be that many.
No, yeah, that kind of reminds me, it kind of goes against, like, like if you give the students options and you're not really holding the expectations high, then it's like, that makes you wonder, like, are you going to like grade standard, do you get me? Like grade level and all that stuff.
I don't think that's to me, that's not part of UDL. When you're telling them, like, you're giving them that option, that's not a UDL thing.
All right, so we have about 8 minutes, so I'm gonna just power through these 17, 18, 19. All right, so 17 is pretty much essentially it's watch and learn. So it's kind of, like looking at like your gen ed teacher like teach, or whatever format you're doing it, or vice versa. Like, it's essentially just observations, seeing it from like an instructional point of view, but as well as like seeing it from a student's point of view, so it could be like one teaches, one sits down and just kind of watches it, and you're just essentially like, it's like a way to build feedback and build like the lesson and all that stuff one another, which is something like, for me, like in the high school setting, we do that a lot. So like, I'll have my gen ed teacher and one day she'll be like, I don't really feel confident with this lesson, like, can you give me feedback, what, like, since you guys are observing, or vice versa, especially because like 10 of those 20 students are half diverse learners. Day 18 is essentially how do you like differentiate the curriculum for not each student, but like essentially for each student. And there's this thing that they talked about called curriculum compacting, which is essentially like modifying the curriculum per student and kind of letting them kind of work on their own. and learn by themselves independently, but still offering that support. They also do like this tic-tac-toe cell blocking, which it's like, all right, these are the things that need to kind of be the objectives that need to be hit for this unit or lesson, and kind of give the students the independence to be like, all right, which ones are you gonna tic-tac-toe with to kind of ensure that you're doing what needs to be done and learning what needs to be learned. Let's see, and then chapter 19 is essentially like looking at the way the you format like when you lesson plan or like teach a lesson. So if it's gonna be like, are you teaching on the whiteboard, are you doing like physical pen and paper, group settings, or what was the other one? There's one that I put like a simulation, kind of giving like the students the responsibility. If like if, for example, like if it's like a history class, like if you're learning about like the law, so you have like your the jury, you have kind of like what's that word, not stimulate or pretend, I guess, just to kind of encourage the kids. There's also like project-based instruction, which is something that we do a lot in the high school I'm at. Sophomores and seniors are required to do like an end of the year like service project. So they have to like, it revolves around like one unit, and they kind of choose like where they want to volunteer. Other than that, that's kind of like a little wrap up from 17, 18, 19. Any thoughts, comments, concerns, emotional outbursts, or in Susie's case, choking up on the cough?
No, we do have 4 minutes, roughly. Want to get to chapter 20 or day 20?
Yes. So what do you guys, let's see, let me notes up here.
Okay, so yeah, day 20, for me, like the big idea, engage, support, and dazzle, was, I guess, ways for us to think about how we'll get the students engaged when they are kind of disconnected from the lesson. So showing what you know, I guess, is one way. And I thought that was like, well, showing what you know as you're lecturing, provide, I guess it was like kind of that one teach one, sensory, where you're providing more than one output as you're instructing. I guess that's where I got from it, it's more like a show and tell. And I thought of it as like a UDL approach where you're trying to instruct all and engage all students and keep them talking is one thing that I liked, where you have a ball, which was one way, you kind of just like throw it, and the student that has the ball or the item will
Kind of talk.
talk. Yeah.
I think that was also really cool. I did like how kind of they went into this like aspect of like keep them talking, get them kind of loose, just kind of give them that freedom to kind of talk with each other. Because as teachers, like I've been guilty. I walk around, they're talking, and I'm like, so what was that awesome idea you talked about,
Yeah.
And then yeah, just kind of give them a little bit of that lax, which kind of gives them like the Blake state, like a brain break, which sometimes is needed just to kind of recollect themselves and reset.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of reminded me of so our social studies teacher, she was out one day, and we got to sub, my mentor and I. We're kind of like the one teach one float in her classroom. And so it was nice when she was out, because we were like the main teachers in the classroom, and we loved it because like we work so well, like we both duet teach, like it's just awesome. And we did a lot of the keep them talking. So like we brought up a topic, and then all of a sudden it was just like snowballing with each other. Like it just kept the kids like, one asked the question and we would respond, and then it was just like not even raising their hands, it just was casual, and it wasn't even off topic, and I was just like, this is what engagement looks like. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, it was nice because the kids didn't feel like, oh my gosh. And then they were like in the beginning of class, they were worried that we weren't going to have enough time. Like they wanted free time at the end of class. And then literally it was minutes to the like bell was going to ring and they were like, "Oh my gosh, class is over." What? Like they didn't even realize it. And that was just like we couldn't even believe how quick time had gone.
It's just like when you're having fun, it just kind of goes by fast.
Yeah.
We do have about a minute left. Should we kind of walk through our words real quick? Like,
Yeah.
okay, so for
Well,
me,
Tiffany did go through hers.
Mhm.
She did say hers.
snowballing, right? And then
Yeah.
I'm doing Tableau, which is a group of models, of motionless figure representing the scene from a story or from history. Susie,
And then mine was myriad. I don't even know if I'm saying it right, but it is a countless of extremely great number. I probably have heard of it, but I've just never really paid attention, and that was my word.
right? Would we recommend this chapter? Or these
Yes,
chapters?
especially 12.
Yes, it's just
In the habit.
the foundation we built from the last 10 days.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we're about to disconnect soon.
Yeah,
I did my best with note taking.
All good. Appreciate it.
that's all good. I'll add some more in there.
Oh, yeah. And then I'll go ahead and upload it on YouTube and